So I just spent $25,000 on a mentorship program with Ryan Pineda. And for those of you who know me on the channel, you know I've often said, do not do this, all right? Do not spend all of this money on these mentorship programs and all that. And so I want to go into why, first of all, I don't think most of you should do that if you have never heard my speech on that before, but also why is it okay now for me to do it, okay? So there's a different point in my real estate investing journey where I feel that I'm at, my business creation journey that I feel that I'm at, where it's okay for me to take this plunge. So I'm going to go into that. Who is Ryan Pineda and what I expect to get from this program going forward, because I'm going to document pretty much all of the time that I've actually been I'm going to be going through this. So I just joined the program, only have done an hour and a half of mentorship so far. I'm going to tell you what I learned on that. So let's go ahead and get into it about $25,000 mentorship programs. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Devin Moreno, and I'm an investor here in the DC, Baltimore City area. And essentially, I have 17 properties as of current, and over the course of my 4 years investing in this area, kind of doing this, figuring this whole thing out, knowing nothing from starting out, I have gotten the fundamentals and the basics to, kind of realize, okay, I'm getting pretty good at this. All right, so when I first started though, I did not want to do mentorship programs. And even though I'm doing one now, I don't think you should. And the reason I usually say that you should not do mentorship programs is because you're too inexperienced to, one, know if you're getting scammed, and two, to really fully utilize all the components of the mentorship model. So essentially, you're going to be learning stuff you can easily Google. I can't. Most of what I'm trying to learn now is beyond the reach of Google. It's actually through experience is how you're going to know that, and you generally have to network and talk with someone with experience. So that's one thing. Many new investors who get mentored by me, for those of you who don't know, I actually mentor people who give me loans, so you can give me a loan and I will pay you to mentor you. And to a lot of those mentees, I actually will tell them, like, look, you really just need to jump into this. No amount of research or anything is really going to make you ready enough for this. And even with me, like, what they're looking for is for me to tell them, like, do this. And it's like almost like I have to do everything kind of almost for them. Not for all of them, obviously. Most of them are pretty good, but I'm just saying, like, there are a lot of mentees out there who really just struggle with this and really probably are better off just keeping the 9-to-5, maybe doing real estate as a side hustle. But these type of programs, these much larger ones, like, obviously you've heard the ones where like Grant Cardone has these massively expensive mentorship programs, and newbies won't get anything really out of them other than a whole bunch of inspiration. Not necessarily always the case, kind of depends on your personality, but for the vast majority, they don't have that foundation. I do have that foundation, and so the reason now I can go into it, I know what I'm talking about, so I already know if what it is full of shit, essentially. And two, I can utilize the networking aspect of mentorship programs. A lot of beginners can't do that. So yeah, you might get some documents here and there, and might get some names here and there, but you can't provide any source of value. When I go into these mentorship programs, I now can talk to the advanced investors, and then I have value that I also can present to them. Maybe not someone like Ryan Pineda, he's a little too far above me, but theoretically anyone in this mentorship program should be right around my level. And I'll show you how the program's structured a little bit to make that the case. That will massively accelerate me. So yeah, I spent $25,000, but I expect to be making hundreds of thousands of dollars at the end of all of this. Now, obviously, that's up to me to figure out how to do. And that's the one reason, once again, that side of like most new investors, they're not gonna be skilled enough. I am the one who has to push and take the information and utilize it. That's a lot harder to do when you haven't done it yet. So that's why most people, I think, shouldn't do the very expensive mentorship programs. Max $1,000, shouldn't do really too much more than that, in my opinion, just starting out, okay? If you spend a little bit more than that, that's fine. Depends on your financial ability. So let's go into it though. Who is this Ryan Pineda guy? So basically, as you can see here on the screen, Ryan Pineda is a person who is a real estate investor. He's actually very famous. Many of you are already going to know him. You see he's on Bigger Pockets and Forbes and Fox and all these other things. And he has a lot of businesses, many multi-million-dollar businesses. This is all of his businesses that he does, or programs, whatnot. I enrolled in his Future Flipper part of his whole package. So essentially, Future Flipper is a program where he essentially, he divides what it looks like to me. Keep in mind, I've only done this one session for an hour and a half. What it looks like to me is that he divides the attendees into 4 different categories. All right, so there's beginners, there's rookies, and then there's kind of an intermediate, and then there's the one with all stars. That's the one that I'm in, I got placed into, and then there's the MVPs, which I assume are just people who are kind of more handheld by Ryan Pineda himself more often. So I work with the all-star team. So yes, I'll be working with Ryan Pineda occasionally, and then theoretically getting his phone number. We'll see about that. But basically, I work with a lot of the guys who work directly with him. And I also work with all the all-stars as part of that whole community. So we'll get into how exactly this program works. I won't go into full details like throwing out documents and stuff because I believe there is an intent for me not to share literally everything. But overall, though, I want to share my journey in this mentorship program, and we'll see if me starting this, where I'm at the end of this, because I'm going to pretty much YouTube everything, right? So we'll see how that ends up going. So let's talk about what I learned so far. So ultimately, I had just a 1.5 hour conversation with Brian Davila. That is one of the people who runs his Future Flipper podcast that he just launched. And he works closely with Ryan Pineda quite often. So, they, I guess have a lot of similar mindsets, we'll just say, as far as like investing and how you plan your business strategy. So one of the things that they noticed immediately about me was I am, of course, one, stretched thin. I actually have a property management company, a construction company, and I actually still technically work with my job a little bit, not really, but we'll get into that in another video. And then also I do this YouTube channel while trying to maintain a social life on top of all of that. And so basically, and then tenant placement and all this, I've got way too much things going on. Now, I already knew that before joining this course. Like, it's pretty obvious and pretty stressed out. Like, okay. So the thing was, like, okay, what do I want to do with that? I knew the various components and what the benefits of each one brought to me, but what exactly should I do? And mainly the conversation came down to slashing my property management business entirely. And it wasn't even about really the money necessarily, so much as the entire business model. They actually told me to just, end that business. The business model just sucks. It doesn't really make that much money. It's not worth the effort unless you really just want to do it and you just like managing properties. Well, I did tell him, hey, I have this unique version of property management where I have rooming houses and it actually makes a lot more money than a typical property management company. Because those of you who know me, I specialize in rooming houses. He was like, you know what? It's not even about the numbers. He didn't even want to see those. It really is just the business model itself. It just doesn't make any sense. So from his perspective, he was talking about the fact that even with my advanced rooming house concept version of it, I would make about $7,000 per house. At that point, if I have skill sets in something far more advanced like construction and flipping houses and such, why would I spend all of my time with a $7,000 a year per house kind of business model? It just is beneath where I'm planning on going. And so better to just scrap that entirely and focus your efforts on things that'll actually make you far more money. It's sort of like, someone who has electrical engineering skills trying to, focus on a very small thing like, I don't know, like running cables or something. And so essentially, it was a good point. And so as of that meeting, I'm pretty much slashing my whole property management concept. And keep in mind, I'm not necessarily going to take word for word everything they asked me to do. Obviously, everything comes from a source of bias. Keep in mind, the program is called Future Flipper, so what they know is flipping houses. But he's still not wrong about the flawed business model that I'm going to be spending a lot more time and effort for far less money when I could just be flipping houses or using my advanced strategies that I have to burr high-end properties and then grab all the equity out tax-free and then stabilize it using my rooming house concept that I'm already very familiar with. So that's one thing. One of the first things I'm going to be doing is cutting that out and then focusing purely on my contracting business, which I'll go into more in other videos on how I intend to restructure that based on the conversation. The other thing I'm going to do is simplify a lot of what I'm doing in real estate and make it repeatable, and essentially creating a program sort of around it, making it where I actually get these deals coming in and creating a cycle where those get flipped and, obviously make a business, an actual business, not like something where I'm in it and I'm self-employed, but an actual business that generates revenue. That's on top of the contracting company for now. And that is what I intend to do with certain houses. If I notice their potential for high equity and such, where I could flip it and make a ton of money, but instead I could just pull the equity out tax-free using my advanced burst strategies that I go in other videos. Then I'll go ahead and do that individually, but otherwise I will churn through. So now I'm actually going to be starting to find my own deals, where before I always told you on the channel, well, how do I find my deals? I just get them from my network of people. I'm actually going to be hiring teams of people like cold callers and such to find me deals, acquisition specialists to find me deals, or partner with wholesalers in the area to churn through deals a lot more quickly than just me looking for them on wholesaler websites. The reason, of course, being the wholesalers pretty much strip all the meat off the bone before they give you the house. So there's not a whole hell of a lot of equity left after they're done with it. And I am removing that person out of the equation and trying to make massive gains with very quick transactions. So overall, in a nutshell, that was it. Now keep in mind, this was an hour-and-a-half conversation with Brian DeVille's group, and then I consulted my own mentor, who me and him talked for like 4 hours. Then I consulted another restaurant owner in Baltimore City. He's already familiar with running restaurants. We talked about my business strategy going forward with my contracting company and how I'm going to systemize that to make faster and better money in that. And so there's a lot going on here. Obviously it wasn't just that, it is an hour-and-a-half conversation, but that's all of my thoughts on this whole mentorship thing, me starting out. I will keep documenting this. I actually have 3 meetings a week with these guys, so that's gonna be real interesting. And actually I can't even request more at any time. So we'll see where that goes, and all the networking that I'll be doing, I will keep you all informed. But if you have any questions about all this, comment below, let me know, and I will talk to you all very soon.